Picture this. A middle-aged man sits in his dusty study, surrounded by stacks of chivalric romances, his mind completely consumed by tales of knights and quests. He's read so many stories about brave warriors rescuing damsels and fighting evil that reality begins to blur. This isn't just any story about delusion, though. This is the birth of one of literature's most enduring and beloved characters, and today we're diving deep into Miguel de Cervantes' masterpiece that changed storytelling forever. What if I told you that a book written over 400 years ago could teach you more about pursuing your dreams, facing reality, and finding meaning in life than most modern self-help books combined? Don Quixote isn't just a story about a crazy old man tilting at windmills. It's a profound exploration of human nature, the power of imagination, and what happens when idealism crashes headfirst into the harsh realities of the world. By the end of this summary, you'll understand why this novel is considered the first modern novel ever written, why it influenced everyone from Shakespeare to Dostoevsky, and most importantly, what timeless lessons it holds for anyone struggling to balance their dreams with reality in today's world. Don Quixote stands as one of the most influential works in the history of literature, fundamentally transforming how stories are told and what novels can accomplish. Written by Miguel de Cervantes and published in two parts in 1605 and 1615, this Spanish masterpiece emerged during the golden age of Spanish literature, a period when Spain was experiencing unprecedented cultural and artistic flourishing. Cervantes himself lived a life that rivaled any adventure story. He was a soldier who fought at the Battle of Lepanto, where he lost the use of his left hand, earning him the nickname El Manco de Lepanto. He was captured by pirates and spent 5 years as a slave in Algeria before being ransomed. These experiences of conflict, captivity, and hardship deeply influenced his writing, bringing authenticity to his exploration of human suffering and resilience. The novel's full title, The Ingenious Gentleman Don Quixote of La Mancha, immediately signals its playful yet serious intent. Cervantes was writing during a time when chivalric romances were extremely popular but increasingly outdated. These tales of perfect knights and impossible adventures had become formulaic and disconnected from real life. Cervantes saw an opportunity to both parody these stories and create something entirely new. What makes Don Quixote revolutionary is its blend of comedy and tragedy, its realistic portrayal of ordinary people, and its sophisticated narrative techniques. Cervantes created a story within a story, claiming to be merely translating the work of an Arab historian named Sidi Hamete Benengeli. This metafictional approach was centuries ahead of its time. The novel's impact extends far beyond Spanish literature. It influenced the development of the modern novel form, inspiring writers across Europe and eventually the world. Its themes of idealism versus realism, the power of imagination, and the search for meaning in an indifferent universe continue to resonate with readers today. The story begins in the Spanish region of La Mancha, where a middle-aged gentleman named Alonso Quijano has spent his inheritance on an enormous collection of chivalric romance novels. His obsession with these tales of knights errant has gradually consumed his sanity, until he can no longer distinguish between fantasy and reality. Convinced that he must revive the age of knight-errantry, he dons makeshift armour, names himself Don Quixote de la Mancha, and sets out to right wrongs and protect the innocent. Don Quixote recruits a simple farmer named Sancho Panza as his squire, promising him the governorship of an island in return for his service. Sancho, motivated by practical concerns and the prospect of reward, agrees to accompany his delusional master despite his better judgment. This partnership between the idealistic, educated Don Quixote and the pragmatic, earthbound Sancho forms the emotional and philosophical core of the novel. Their adventures take them across the Spanish countryside, where Don Quixote's chivalric delusions lead to a series of misadventures. He attacks windmills, believing them to be giants, charges at flocks of sheep, thinking they're armies, and mistakes inns for castles. Each episode reveals the gap between Don Quixote's romantic ideals and the harsh realities of 17th century Spanish society. The novel's second part, published 10 years later, shows both characters evolved by their experiences. Don Quixote becomes more thoughtful and sometimes questions his mission, while Sancho develops his own wisdom and begins to understand his master's deeper motivations. Their relationship deepens from master and servant to genuine friendship, with each character learning from the other. The story concludes with Don Quixote's eventual defeat and return home, where he renounces his knightly fantasies on his deathbed, dying as Alonso Quijano once again. This ending has sparked centuries of debate about whether Cervantes endorses or condemns his protagonist's idealistic quest. The novel opens with one of literature's most famous character transformations. Alonso Quijano, a country gentleman approaching 50, has read so many chivalric romances that his brain has dried up and his imagination has taken complete control. Cervantes describes this transformation with both humour and pathos, showing how literature can literally reshape a person's perception of reality. This isn't simply madness for madness' sake. Cervantes reveals that Alonso chooses his delusion partly because the real world disappoints him. His transformation into Don Quixote represents a rejection of mundane reality in favour of a more meaningful, if impossible, existence. Don Quixote's first adventure ends almost before it begins. He sets out alone, but his makeshift armour falls apart and he's forced to return home after a single day. This failure leads to one of the novel's most significant scenes, his dubbing ceremony at an inn he believes to be a castle. The innkeeper, playing along with the delusion, performs a mock ceremony that officially makes Don Quixote a knight-errant. This episode establishes the pattern of how other characters will respond to Don Quixote throughout the novel, sometimes with cruelty, sometimes with kindness, but always revealing something about their own character. Don Quixote's decision to recruit Sancho Panza as his squire proves to be the novel's masterstroke. Sancho represents everything Don Quixote is not: practical, materialistic, illiterate, and firmly grounded in reality. Yet their partnership works because each man fills a void in the other's life. Don Quixote needs someone to witness his adventures and provide human connection, while Sancho needs purpose and the possibility of advancement. The relationship evolves from exploitation to genuine friendship, with each character gradually adopting some of the other's characteristics. Perhaps the most famous scene in all of literature occurs when Don Quixote attacks a group of windmills, believing them to be giants. This episode has given the English language the phrase tilting at windmills, meaning to fight imaginary enemies or pursue unrealistic goals. However, Cervantes uses the scene to explore deeper themes about perception and reality. Don Quixote's explanation that the magician Freston transformed the giants into windmills at the last moment shows how he protects his worldview from contradictory evidence. The scene also demonstrates Sancho's growing loyalty as he tries to prevent the attack, while knowing it's futile. One of the novel's most morally complex episodes occurs when Don Quixote encounters a chain gang of prisoners being transported to serve as galley slaves. Convinced that these are innocent people being oppressed, he attacks their guards and frees them. This adventure reveals both the nobility and the danger of Don Quixote's idealism. He genuinely wants to help those he perceives as victims, but his actions have real consequences. The freed prisoners ungratefully rob him and Sancho before fleeing, showing how good intentions can lead to chaos when divorced from practical wisdom. In the second part of the novel, Don Quixote and Sancho encounter a duchess and duke who have read about their adventures in the first part of the book. These aristocrats decide to elaborate on the joke by treating Don Quixote as a real knight-errant and staging elaborate adventures for their entertainment. They even make Sancho the governor of a fake island. This section serves multiple purposes. It shows how Don Quixote's fame has spread, explores the relationship between fiction and reality, and critiques the idle cruelty of the nobility. The Duchess and Duke's behaviour is arguably more morally questionable than Don Quixote's delusions. The novel's climax occurs when Don Quixote faces the Knight of the White Moon in single combat. This mysterious knight is actually Samson Carrasco, a young man from Don Quixote's village who has disguised himself to force his neighbour to abandon his quest. The knight defeats Don Quixote in fair combat and demands that he return home and give up knight-errantry for a year. This defeat represents the triumph of practical reality over idealistic fantasy, yet Cervantes presents it as a tragedy rather than a comedy. Don Quixote's acceptance of defeat shows his honour, but it also marks the beginning of his spiritual death. The novel concludes with Don Quixote's final transformation back into Alonso Quijano. Fever brings him clarity and he renounces his knightly fantasies as foolish delusions. He dies peacefully, surrounded by friends who have grown to love him despite his madness. This ending has generated enormous debate among readers and critics. Some see it as a victory of reason over delusion, while others view it as the defeat of noble idealism by harsh reality. Cervantes deliberately leaves this interpretation ambiguous, allowing readers to decide for themselves whether Don Quixote's quest was ultimately worthwhile. Don Quixote demonstrates that reality is not fixed but highly dependent on individual perception. Don Quixote sees giants where others see windmills, castles where others see inns, and princesses where others see peasant girls. While his perceptions are delusional, they're also creative and meaningful to him. This teaches us that our mental frameworks powerfully influence our experience of life. Two people can encounter the same situation and have completely different experiences based on their expectations, beliefs, and attitudes. The novel suggests that while we shouldn't completely divorce ourselves from objective reality, we do have significant power to shape our experience through our chosen perspective. The friendship between Don Quixote and Sancho Panza illustrates how crucial it is to have companions who balance our weaknesses and complement our strengths. Don Quixote provides vision and purpose, while Sancho offers practical wisdom and grounding. Neither character would succeed alone, but together they create something greater than the sum of their parts. This teaches us to seek relationships where we can both give and receive, where our companions challenge us to grow while accepting our fundamental nature. True friendship involves loyalty, even when we disagree with our friends' choices. Throughout the novel, Don Quixote's high ideals clash with Sancho's practical concerns, creating an ongoing dialogue about how to live meaningfully in an imperfect world. Don Quixote's idealism inspires noble actions but often leads to disaster, while Sancho's pragmatism keeps them alive but sometimes prevents growth. The novel suggests that the healthiest approach combines both perspectives. We need ideals to give life meaning and direction, but we also need practical wisdom to navigate reality effectively. Pure idealism without practical considerations leads to futility, while pure pragmatism without ideals leads to spiritual emptiness. While Don Quixote's imagination is admirable in some ways, his complete disconnection from reality ultimately proves destructive. He causes harm to himself and others through his delusions, and his inability to adapt to changing circumstances limits his effectiveness. This warns us about the dangers of refusing to acknowledge uncomfortable truths or retreating into wishful thinking when facing difficult challenges. Mental flexibility and the ability to adjust our beliefs based on new evidence are crucial for success and well-being. However, the novel also suggests that some degree of imaginative thinking is necessary for a meaningful life. Don Quixote's quest is doomed from the start, yet there's something admirable about his commitment to fighting injustice and protecting the innocent. His failures don't negate the nobility of his intentions or the inspiration he provides to others. This teaches us that the pursuit of worthy goals has value independent of whether we achieve them. Sometimes the attempt itself transforms us and influences others in positive ways. The novel suggests that a life spent pursuing high ideals, even unsuccessfully, may be more meaningful than a life spent in comfortable mediocrity. Cervantes blurs the lines between reality and fiction throughout the novel, creating a complex meditation on the nature of truth. Characters read about their own adventures, authors appear as characters, and the boundary between the real world and the world of books becomes increasingly unclear. This teaches us the truth is often more complex than it appears, and that fiction can reveal truths that purely factual accounts cannot. Stories shape how we understand ourselves and our world, and the line between objective reality and subjective experience is not always clear. When Don Quixote is finally defeated by the Knight of the White Moon, he accepts his loss with grace and honour. Rather than making excuses or refusing to acknowledge reality, he submits to the terms of their agreement. This demonstrates that how we handle failure and defeat reveals our true character. Maintaining dignity in difficult circumstances, accepting responsibility for our choices, and treating others with respect even when we're vulnerable are marks of genuine nobility. The novel suggests that there are ways to lose that are more honourable than certain kinds of victory. The novel itself is about the power of books to transform lives, sometimes dramatically and dangerously. Don Quixote's madness is caused by reading, but the story of his adventures also inspires and entertains others. This paradox illustrates that literature and stories have genuine power to shape how we think and act. They can inspire us to greater nobility or lead us into dangerous delusions. This teaches us to approach stories mindfully, taking from them what serves us while maintaining our critical faculties. The stories we choose to consume and the way we interpret them significantly influence who we become. Don Quixote's individual vision drives the narrative, but the wisdom of the community ultimately proves necessary for survival and growth. Characters like the priest, the barber, and even Sancho represent communal wisdom that challenges Don Quixote's private fantasies. The novel suggests that while individual vision and creativity are essential, they must be balanced with the accumulated wisdom of the community. Neither blind conformity nor complete individualism leads to optimal outcomes. We need both the courage to pursue our unique vision and the humility to learn from others. Despite his many failures and the damage caused by his delusions, Don Quixote ultimately finds peace and redemption in his final transformation back into Alonso Quijano. His death is presented as a kind of spiritual victory, suggesting that it's never too late to change course and find meaning. This teaches us that no matter how far we've strayed from wisdom, or how many mistakes we've made, the possibility of redemption remains open. True redemption often requires acknowledging our errors and changing our behaviour, but it also involves accepting ourselves with compassion and recognising the value in our journey, even when it's been difficult. Don Quixote remains relevant today because it grapples with timeless questions about how to live meaningfully in an imperfect world. Cervantes created a work that simultaneously celebrates and critiques idealism, showing us both its nobility and its dangers. In our current era of social media, political polarisation, and rapid change, the novel's themes feel remarkably contemporary. We all face the challenge of balancing our dreams with reality, of maintaining hope while acknowledging harsh truths. The relationship between Don Quixote and Sancho Panza offers a model for how seemingly incompatible worldviews can coexist and even strengthen each other. Their friendship suggests that we don't need to choose between idealism and pragmatism, between vision and practicality. Instead, we can learn to integrate both perspectives, using our ideals to guide us while remaining grounded in reality. Perhaps most importantly, Don Quixote teaches us that the pursuit of noble goals has value independent of whether we achieve them. In a world that often seems cynical and materialistic, the novel reminds us that there's something admirable about fighting for justice, beauty, and truth, even when victory seems impossible. Don Quixote's legacy isn't his success as a knight-errant, but his demonstration that ordinary people can choose to live by extraordinary principles. Cervantes gave us a character who embodies both the glory and the folly of human aspiration. Don Quixote's story reminds us that while we must be realistic about the world's limitations, we shouldn't let practical concerns completely extinguish our capacity for wonder, idealism, and moral courage. The novel's enduring popularity suggests that readers continue to find inspiration in this unlikely knight's impossible quest, discovering in his story a reflection of their own struggles to live meaningfully in an often disappointing world.